Hello and welcome to episode 93 of the HaskinCast Podcast, the NAMM 2020 wrap-up. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the NAMM show, that stands for the National Association of Music Merchandisers, where a lot of companies come to Anaheim, California, to the convention center, bring their new toys, bring out the new gear. A lot of companies come saying, hey, we're a new company. We're interested in distribution across the globe or in the United States. And it's 1/3 new gear, 1/3 networking / meetings, and 1/3 family reunion. And we'll get into all of that cool stuff. I just got back into town late last night, so I don't have a whole lot to talk about since the last episode, because since I published the last episode, I've been getting ready for the show and then out in California and just getting back. So not much going on aside from the show at the moment, and except for the things that happened at the show. So I'm going to get right into that. And first, I want to say thank you to my friends at Audionamix, who were very, very sweet. They're always just such wonderful people. You guys might remember Ellie from episode 64, I believe it was, where we talked about IDC, the Instant Dialogue Cleaner, which I do not do a podcast without this tool. I won't do it. And they also have a program called Extract Stems, where they take music, a finished piece of music, and they are able to split out a vocal track, a drum track, and an other track, which is everything else. Because how would you separate a guitar from a synthesizer? How would it know the difference? I really don't know. Or even a keyboard. I suppose you could probably do specific instruments like a Hammond organ, a piano, something like that. But that can get pretty crazy in the number of tracks. But they're upgrading, and that will be out soon. To an even better version of Extract Stems. I was blown away with the demo that they showed me, but they were also, I was very surprised. I did not know this. They were featuring my demo that they used a bit of my podcast. And it's up on their website as an example of how to use IDC, their Instant Dialogue Cleaner. And they had me send them some rough audio, and then they did an example of how easy it is to clean the audio from all the background noise, which is always a problem. No matter what you do, there's going to be some element of background noise coming in, especially in a home recording situation. Even if you're on a laptop and it's across the room, you're going to get some kind of a little bit of fuzz coming in your mic, especially if you use a high-powered condenser mic like I do. I use the AT3035, which has been in my possession since... When did I leave Colorado? I left Colorado in January of 2002. And I bought the mic just before then. So I've owned this mic for 18 years now, and it still works as great as the day I got it. And, there might be more efficient mics. There might be some cleaner mics. But honestly, I love this thing. I'm so used to working with it. I looked at hundreds of mics at the NAMM show, and yet I was not interested in trying any one of them. Anytime I thought about, well, maybe I should upgrade the mic. Maybe I should see what's out there. I thought, why? What I have works. It works beautifully for me. I'm so used to it. I know how to EQ it. I know how to balance the noise with it. It's a member of the family. So I didn't really want to do that, although I did look at tons of mics, but I didn't listen to a single one. I probably should, just so that I know what's out there and what's available. But really, I don't need to at the moment. So the trip started out kind of weird. So I'm just gonna walk through the whole trip with you guys. So I was supposed to pick up my rental car at 5 a.m. on Thursday. And 2 days before, I double checked the reservation, and it had me picking up the car at 5 p.m. on Thursday. Now, I swear to you, to all of you that are listening, I checked 3 times before I hit the submit button that I had that scheduled for a 5 a.m. pickup. And I was returning the car at 8 o'clock p.m. on Monday. Now, I've booked odd hour trips like this before, and it's never been a problem. But for some reason, the rental car company their computer, I should say, did not like the fact that I had an extra 3 hours, and they required that I pay for a full day, which I was not happy with, especially having just lost 12 hours and my day at the beach which I really enjoy. You know, that's the one sort of revitalizing day that I have. The day before NAMM, I head up to Newport Beach. I walk the beach all day long. I had plans to meet a very good friend of mine for lunch that I unfortunately had to cancel. So the trip did not start out the way I wanted it to. And when I got on the road, the weirdest thing, first of all, I'm picking up the car at 5:00 on a Thursday. So now I'm going to hit rush hour traffic. But fortunately, heading towards Los Angeles, it wasn't too bad. It was just at the beginning where the freeways are merging. But I get close to Prim, and all of a sudden there's just this smoke in the air and fog, and it was really weird conditions. I don't really see fog too often in the desert. I've seen it a couple of times, but not a whole lot. And so it's always kind of surreal. And I wasn't sure if there was a fire ahead and it was smoke from the fire or what was going on. And then it looked like there was an awful lot of light coming from the direction of the freeway where I was headed. So I wasn't sure if there was a fire or what was going on. And as it turns out, it was literally just fog all over Prim, before Prim, and for a couple miles after. And then it was just the end of that. And so it was a fairly clean trip to Costa Mesa, which is where I stay for the NAMM show. It's about 18 minutes, I think, to the parking space that I like. And it's 25 minutes to Newport Beach. So it's kind of the perfect place to stay when I have time to go back and forth. Unfortunately, I never made it to the beach. I had intended to, but, I have a bad knee, and I thought with all the walking that I've done, it's not in the greatest of shape to go out to the beach and expose it to the cool morning air before I head back. Probably is not the best idea. I think I'll regret that all the way home. So I opted not to. So I'll have to head back for a special trip to go to the beach to have lunch with my friend and make up for that day that I lost. So first night was fairly calm. By the time I got to the hotel, I was exhausted, just pretty much got ready for the show, kind of remapped everything in my head, headed out the next morning early because I wanted to get my badge and have that before the show opened. And you never know how long the lines are going to be. So NAMM starts on Thursday. My first day was going to be Friday. So there's a lot of people that start Friday and there's a lot of people that start Saturday. And some people that go Saturday come Friday to pick up their badges. So you never know what the lines are going to be like. And of course, I walked right in and got my badge. And then I had like an hour and 15 minutes before the doors opened to the show that I had to kill. So I just, went through my plan that I had of certain things that I wanted to attack on the first day. And one of the big things for me was that I saw that Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple was going to be doing a meet and greet for Orange Amps, who is, he's one of their endorsers. And I'm not familiar with Orange Amps. I don't amp my bass. I plug in direct when I record, and I don't do any live stuff. So everything is just direct recording for the moment. And so I'm not familiar with them. And I thought, well, this will be great. And I looked at the schedule and I'm like, okay, he's doing an autograph signing at this time. That's great. Now, I had reached out to Ernie Ball Strings because I know that Steve Morse, who's also from Deep Purple, the current guitar player, I know that he often makes appearances for Ernie Ball. So I thought, well, there's a good chance he'll be here. And I'd reached out to Ernie Ball a couple of weeks prior to the show. And they wrote me back and they said, yes, he'll be there. We're not sure what the times are, but we'll be posting them a day or two before the show. Perfect. All right, great. Plenty of time to still make my plan. Although it never got posted. If it did, I have no idea where on the site it was. I even went to their NAMM link with all the new products that they were showcasing. I went to the artist page, could not find anything on when Steve Morse was going to appear. So when I finally get into the show, the first thing I do is I make a beeline for Ernie Ball. I know generally where they're at because the guitars, all the guitars and strings and stuff and parts are on one side of the main hall. Then it sort of delves into orchestra instruments and then percussion. And then into one half of that side becomes like DJ lighting and stuff like that. And then the other side becomes like electronics and turntables not turntables, keyboards and things like that. And then it gets into like VSTs and stuff. And then it gets split down another part of the building where that picks up again. But so I knew generally where they were and I found them fairly quickly. But that wasn't the only reason I wanted to talk to them. I saw that they came out with a new flat wound string, and my buddy Jeff had recommended for the ambient music that I record that I use flat wound strings because, I'm still a novice bass player. I'm still learning a lot about it. And so I thought, well, perfect. They've got a new flat wound. I can talk to them about it, see if they think it would be good for what I'm doing. and then I can also ask them about Steve. So I did actually find a new set of strings that I'm going to try for the next ambient project that I do. I'm not sure when that will be, based on a couple of projects that I picked up potentially at the show, and I was very excited. So then, of course, I asked him about Steve, and he goes, "Well, I'm not sure, but we have a board outside the booth." So I went and checked, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, this kind of conflicts a little bit with the time that I'm going to stand in line for Glenn, because I don't know how long this line is going to be. I don't know how long it'll take me to get to the front. I'll try to go early, but sometimes you can't make it, or the line starts way longer than you thought it was. I think it was 4.5 hours I waited for Alice Cooper a couple of years ago. So I wasn't sure that I'd be able to squeeze both in. So Glenn was doing an appearance on Friday and Saturday. And as far as I knew, Steve was just doing Friday because they only had that day posted. So I thought, okay, I'll get with Steve first, and then I've got tomorrow that I can catch Glenn. So Steve was actually doing a demo at 1 and not the meet and greet until 4:30. So I went and saw him play, and then I thought, well, okay, maybe I do have enough time. I'll go check out Glenn's line, and I got in line for Glenn. And I was maybe 20 minutes, I think, at the most that I waited. And because I got there just early enough. And so I got to meet Glenn, which was great. And, one thing that's really important to me, and I think I've talked about this before, is it's really important when I get a chance to thank someone who's had a big influence on my life, on my career, on me as a person, whatever it is, that I really want to thank them for that. And to get a chance to thank people who, I've been listening to Glenn play for 35 years, and to get a chance to fist bump him, because a lot of artists like to fist bump now. They don't want to shake hands because there's a lot of germs and stuff, especially with the, probably 500 people he probably talked to that day. So it was a fist bump, just like with Carl Palmer when I met him a few years ago. And to really thank him. And we talked about the latest Black Country Communion album, Black Country Communion 4, which I think is a fantastic album. It's really different. It's musically, it's not quite like anything I've heard before. And from the interviews that I've listened to, he and Joe Bonamassa wrote it together. And it's a fantastic album. If you're into sort of progressive rock, check it out. Black Country Communion 4. So right now he's working on a new project with the Dead Daisies, which is another one of his bands. He's always got multiple things going on, and I'm going to have to get his book that is available on Amazon. It's currently only available in hardcover, unfortunately. I was hoping there was an audio version because that's how I tend to listen to books, but at the moment there isn't. And but I had a great the meetings are fairly brief because the lines are long. But I had a great time talking to him. It was great to meet him in person. He's larger than life, that guy. And so right afterwards, it was getting close to 4:00. So I thought, well, I better go get in line for Steve, and maybe I can get both of these done today. So I get to back to the Ernie Ball booth, and there's nobody in line. It's perfect. There's a guy up there playing some songs. And I'm like, he doesn't look familiar to me. I don't know who he is. And they don't have, I didn't want to run back around to the front of the booth to see who is playing, because I thought, well, I don't want to lose my spot now because I'm first and this is perfect. I can talk to Steve and before he gets worn out from all the people. And so I'm sitting in line, and then the guy that was playing comes and sits down to do a meet and greet at a little after 4. And I thought, well, Steve starts at 4:30. There's the line. There's all that. How's this going to work? But now I'm awkwardly in the front of the line, and there's somebody there to sign autographs, and I don't know who he is. And so he sits down and he looks up at me, and I don't know what to do. So I very politely, I introduced myself, and I said, I'm sorry, I really enjoyed your playing, but I'm sorry I'm not familiar with you. Who are you? And so he goes, well, that's okay. Not everybody knows who I am. And he proceeds to tell me, he's an Ernie Ball endorser, obviously, otherwise he wouldn't be there. He plays in 3 bands. He's got all this other stuff going on. I'm like, wow, that's really, something that's, I don't know how you manage all that. And he goes, well, it's difficult. So we chat a little bit, and I just say, well, it was really nice to meet you. And I walk away. I have his name written down somewhere. I'm going to have to research who he was, but apparently he is kind of a big deal. But it's really weird because the most disappointing thing about it was that I had to get out of line and go all the way to the back of the line, whereas I was first. And I had strategically planned it because they didn't have anybody on the board. They had somebody at 3:30, but none at 4. So the whole thing was kind of a mess. But as it turned out, I was like 6th in line to meet Steve. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Steve Morse, he's the current guitar player for Deep Purple. He also plays with the Dixie Dregs when they get back together. He's played for Kansas. He's had the Steve Morse Band, and he has been ranked the #1 guitar player in the world. I don't know how many years, and he's phenomenal. But he's also known to be a very, very nice guy, which I absolutely found that to be the case. But here's where the disappointment comes in. One of the reasons that I was really excited, and if you guys listen to the episode where I had John Matola and Nathan Beaudry on from the Deep Purple podcast, where I told my Roger Glover story about how I wish that, if I could get them to play any one song from the old catalog, it would be Fools from the Fireball album. And Roger looked at me and he said, Fools, yeah, how does that go? And I sang him the first couple lines of the song. Which is kind of weird. Like, I'm singing a song to the guy who was one of the writers on it. But, of course, how many songs has this guy written? It's, in the hundreds, if not thousands. So I've always been trying not to, but kind of proud of the idea that I put it into his head. And then the band had started doing it because they didn't do it at the show that I was at, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said that. But when they went on tour or finished the tour, they had done a DVD. And when the DVD came out, Fools was on the DVD. And so since he didn't know the song and I had to sing it to him, I've always kind of secretly been a little bit proud of maybe I've given something back to the band who's given me so much. And so I took that opportunity to ask Steve, when you guys were on the Abandon tour, do you remember why you started playing Fools? And he smiled. He's like, Fools. Yeah, well, we've been doing it on and off. And some nights we did it and some nights we didn't. And so I'm like, well, that kind of sucks because it was, I'd rather know the truth. If I wasn't responsible for that, if I didn't find some way to give back to that band that particular way, that's okay. I'd rather know the truth, but it is a little bit disappointing, of course, because why wouldn't I want to have been responsible for them bringing this great song back from into their catalog? Or into the live set from their catalog. But that's okay. If it wasn't me, that's fine. Maybe Roger was just having some fun with me. And that's kind of what I wonder. But there's still that little glimmer of hope because of the timing of it, that maybe they were slipping it in and out of the set. But that was after I met them. So I still don't know for sure. But Steve was unfortunately not able to validate that hope of mine. But I had a great time talking to him. Very, very nice guy. He's also an airline pilot. Which is a couple of the singer for Iron Maiden, who I can't think of right now. I can picture him, I can hear him singing, but I can't think of his name at the moment. But he is also a pilot, which is interesting. But yeah, it was great. I mean, and again, to be able to say thank you for not just everything I've enjoyed as a fan of music or enjoyed as a musician, but everything that I've learned from the music. And he's had a profound influence on Deep Purple's sound, and they started doing different time signatures and different stuff than the kind of things that they were doing before. So it was really great. And I don't know that the band would have continued on had he not decided to join, because they were all pretty adamant about him being the guitar player. But in any case, it all landed the way it landed, and it was nice to be able to shake his hand and say thank you for everything. And the music of the Dixie Dregs is fantastic, and the Steve Morse Band is really good, and so much music over the years. I'm not sure what he played on with Kansas, so I couldn't really comment on that. But just knowing the quality of his playing, and being that he has been ranked #1 guitar player year after year, there's definitely some good reason for that. And if you check out anything he's done within just probably a few bars, you'll see what I mean. So let's see. Well, before that even happened, so I went to the Ernie Ball booth that morning. And I'm just walking around, and within probably 15 minutes of being in the actual show, I ran into my guest from episode 44, Leslie Butts, who is a rep for a lot of different companies. My favorite being Paiste Cymbals, as I am not shy about saying that. And Big Bang Distribution is one of his, and they carry such a multitude of products, everything from, earplugs and little bits to cover your drumsticks, to drum sets and guitars and all kinds of things, a lot of percussion stuff, a lot of accessories. guitar stands, picks, all kinds of things. And they're a fantastic company. When I used to work at a music store in Colorado, the boxes for them were huge, and the packing lists were so long because there were just so many tiny little parts that our part orderer Julie would order, and I love her to death, but she killed me with some of those orders. They were just huge and took forever to check in, but it was good times, great times, and they're a great company, and I really appreciate it. I've purchased a lot of things from them over the years, and it was great to catch up with Les, and especially, the show had only been going on one day, so he wasn't too tired from all the meetings and everything yet, but he was booked pretty solid. So I was very excited for him that he's got all this new stuff going on, and it was great to see him and catch up with him. He wasn't at the show last year, so it was, it's one of those things where it's the one time of year that you see certain people in your life, and Les and I have known each other for probably 20 years, 15, 20 years, somewhere in there. And, he's a great guy. So it's great to catch up with him and great to see him. And he was definitely missed last year. And but it was just random that I ran into him that early. And it's a good thing I did, because he was booked solid with meetings and I might not have seen him otherwise. If I hadn't run into him, I would have messaged him and we probably would have scheduled something, I'm sure. But I'm really glad I got to see him when I did. And then I just kind of walked around a bit, and I went down to Hall E. Now, Hall E is where the new vendors, the smaller vendors, I don't mean smaller that they aren't better equipped or anything. It's just they usually carry like only a small number of products. This is their, a lot of times, first time at the show or second time at the show. So they have kind of like, it's like the newbie area, which I guess is a little bit more affordable, a little bit more workable. And having all these new people in one area, a lot of them are looking for distribution and things, whereas a lot of the people on the main floors already have that. So if you're a distributor and you're looking for new products to put in your catalog, Hall E is the place that you go first, and probably 3 or 4 times during the show, and meet these people. And there's a lot of people that come from overseas, and I applaud them for all the gear that they bring. That's got to be a hassle and a huge expense. I'm sure those booths aren't inexpensive. And there was some really cool stuff down there. It's a lot of ukuleles and a lot of acoustic guitars, a good amount of electric guitars because they're the biggest, the biggest instrument, and a lot of cables, a lot of microphones, a lot of speakers, a lot of that technology. So when you're walking the halls or that hall, you're just going to see tons and tons and tons of that same stuff. Now, the challenge is that you don't know if these people are also looking for consumer feedback or if they're really just looking for that distribution deal. And a lot of them are, from foreign countries, so they're not necessarily comfortable speaking English. So they really don't reach out to a lot of people, and they kind of just sit in their chairs and they stay on their phones, and they really kind of isolate themselves. And then there's some that are just hanging right at the edge of that booth, and they're watching everybody that goes by, and they say hi and they greet everybody, and they're like, "Hey, come look at what we've got." And they're really outgoing, and it's a really weird dynamic. So you never really know what you're going to get when you go down there, except that you are going to get a heavy amount of ukuleles and acoustic guitars, definitely some niche things. I talked to a headphone company there for a bit that had some really interesting stuff. I demoed the headphones. They sounded amazing, really crystal clear. And I'm not sure what the price points are because I couldn't really understand what they were saying, but I've got their cards, so I'm going to look them up and see, and then maybe I'll get that in the show notes, or I'll follow up with that at another time when I have the time to research it. And I'm going to do a little bit of grab bag while I'm doing this, because I've got a lot of cards and pamphlets and things that I can share with you guys on some of these products, and just kind of give you an idea of what's out there. So then I went over and saw my dear friends at Audionamix, who are just some of my favorite people. You guys may remember Ellie from episode 64, as I mentioned earlier, where she came in and talked about IDC and extract stems, and met the rest of the team while I was there, and just absolutely fantastic people. And they demoed stuff for me. But it was just great to see them. Great to see Ellie. Great to meet everybody and put some faces with the names of the people that I've been hearing about. And I'm going to be doing a walkthrough here of how I use IDC, pretty soon, and we talked about that. And then when they get the new version of Extract Stems out, then I will probably do a walkthrough of that as well. Now that I've got the software up and running, I'm also going to be doing a walkthrough of Nada, which is Eduardo Tarilante's new relaxation / new age sound library, which I was very honored to be a beta tester on that. And I wrote a couple of demos. I'll have those links in the show notes. It's just an absolutely beautiful program. It comes out at the end of the month. I've had it for, I want to say 2 months, and definitely fell in love with it. It's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful library if you're into that, or even if you're looking to layer some sounds or looking for some good vocals or just a few instruments on there. It's definitely worth checking out, if not just going ahead and purchasing. If you're in the realm of any of that, if you're doing film scores, if you're doing fantasy video games, any of that stuff, I think it's really suited well for, probably even some documentaries. Lots of great stuff, though. I really thoroughly enjoyed beta testing that and going through every sound and every key and hitting combinations and layering things together. But the thing is, with a guy like Eduardo, he has a certain standard, and he has a certain way of doing things where all of his things, no matter how long ago he did them, seem to blend together well. You know, they sound like they were all created at the same time. And that's one of the things that's great, because if you're using multiple instruments of his, they just blend together so seamlessly that everything feels like it's one world, which is an absolutely beautiful thing for a composer. It's hard when you have to blend sounds that don't quite have the not the sonic qualities, just they sound like they're from different worlds. And sometimes that can be an advantage if that's what you're going for, but it's nice to have things that just blend so beautifully together. And, I was watching him demo it for some other people. And, of course, we talked about it quite a bit while I was there. And, Wolfgang, who works for BestService, was there as always from Germany, and always great to see him. And he's always jetting off to meetings here and there, so it's hard to catch him. But I did get to spend a little bit of time with them, which was great. And God, they have so many different products that they distribute for, which is great, because it's nice to have everything in one area. Instead of trying to figure out how all these different companies' installers work, so their installer is very consistent through all their programs, and it just works beautifully. So really nice to consolidate as much as possible and work with fewer people and having more things available through those fewer people. So I like those kind of distributors. So I've got the links in the show notes for the 2 songs that I did with Eduardo, for Eduardo, I should say. But keep an eye out on YouTube for the walkthrough. I'll be getting to that hopefully in the next week, and kind of giving some ideas of how beautiful this instrument really is. Even the interface alone, it's very welcoming, very relaxing, almost kind of citrusy in color, a really beautiful color palette. And it's just, when you open the program up and you see that, you just want to write stuff. It's very inspiring. And let's see what else. So, those were the main people that I went out there to see as far as, friends go. And then I was hoping to hook up with some of my friends while I was there. Some we did, some we didn't. And for the ones that didn't, we'll definitely be in touch soon. And hopefully maybe when I go out there to visit, we can find some time if they're local, or, we can do some Skype sessions or whatever with some of my other friends and phone calls and whatnot. So definitely it was a great trip. And I talked to some people about a couple of projects that I may be working on. That was very unexpected and very exciting. And I have to write a bunch of demos here coming up in the next few days. So I will be busy writing, which is great, because I've already got next week's episode uploaded. The second part of Chandra Jefferson's interview will be next week. And then I've got a whole ton of great things coming as we race away to episode 100, which is already uploaded. And I'm just waiting to rearrange the date of release until I know what day episode 99 airs. And scheduled some guests, or not scheduled some guests, but talked to some people about coming on the show. We're working on schedules, and got a lot of great stuff coming up. But I've got a little bit of a buffer time, which is great, because I have a novel to proofread and some demos to write, and another couple of pieces of music to get done. So, and I've got to start on these walkthroughs. So lots of good stuff coming up from me. Got to spend a little bit of time with my friend Mark Brisbane, who is an audio teacher in Phoenix, and a very talented guy. I love his stories from when he worked with Hans Zimmer at Remote Control. Very interesting place to spend your time. And he knows just about everybody. He's another one of those people that just seems to know everybody, and he's got all these great stories, and he's just a hell of a guy. So I was really grateful to get to spend some time with him because I haven't seen him in years. And so it was a great show, between the meetings and the potential projects, meeting Steve Morris and Glenn Hughes. That was huge. That would have been worth the trip alone, let alone all these other things. And then seeing all my friends, seeing these new products that are coming out, and very excited about what Audionamix has going on. There's definitely some cool stuff. So I'm going to do a little bit of a sort of, grab bag. I'm going to grab some of the paraphernalia that I got while I was there, business cards, little mini pamphlets and catalogs and things like that, and talk to you guys about some of the products that I saw, some that were really kind of cool and innovative. The first one I'll grab, because it's just sitting on the top of my stack here, is a program called Lumatone, or I'm sorry, it's sort of a new keyboard called Lumatone. It's it's shaped like a keyboard. It's a rectangle, but it's got these diagonal rows of hexagons that are buttons that light up. You can press them. They have a velocity sensor, what do you call that? Velocity sensory. That they have that, and it's basically a keyboard. It's MIDI programmable. You can program all the buttons. You can program a button to anything. You can program it to a controller. You can program it to a note. And there's several different settings that you can use to store whatever your setups are. And I think it's 200 and some buttons, I think, that are programmable on there. And you can even program what lights you want them to be. So if you say, all of the things on this MIDI channel are purple, and then all the things on this MIDI channel are orange, and that MIDI channel are green. So it's very visual. And since you can line it up any way you want, you can perform things that you probably wouldn't be able to perform on a keyboard. You can do 3 octaves by putting the next octave up right next to the button that you're pressing, instead of a physical octave up as you would have it on a keyboard. So it's very, very versatile. But there's only the one version of it. I was hoping that maybe there was a smaller sort of entry level version, because this one's going to retail between $3,000 and $4,000. And I'm really not sure. I'm sure that's a fine price point for what it is, but for it being a brand new product and not something that people are really familiar with, I don't know how many people you're going to get to bite on that. But if you get a couple of artists endorsing it, who knows? But either way, it was cool. I got to play it, and it would take some getting used to, because you're used to keyboard keys, or you're used to guitar frets or whatever. And the keys, the buttons are not small, but they're not really big either. And they're hexagons, and they're a little bit rounded at the top. So you have to get used to the feel of playing it, because that's going to be a little bit of an adjustment. But a very cool instrument nonetheless. I really liked it. And I think that it has a lot of potential. And maybe at some point they'll do like a mini version of it, where it's a third of it or a quarter of it or something. And people can kind of give it a little bit of a try and see. So that was one thing that really stood out to me. The next thing, and I just happened to see this, I didn't notice it the first time I was in the area, but when I went back to talk to a new friend that I made, I happened to look over and I saw the Millennium Falcon bass guitar and 6-string guitar. I kid you not, and you may have seen this on Instagram or on Facebook, but it is literally a plastic 1970s model Millennium Falcon with all the innards taken out and typically painted up or done up as if it's been in battle. And a fretboard has been attached to it. Pickups and a bridge have been attached to it. And it's really kind of a neat thing. They do sound great. I thought I didn't get to hear the bass, but I got to hear the maker of them was playing around. And I thought it sounded pretty good. I'm not the most brilliant guy as far as what a guitar should and shouldn't sound like. It's not my instrument, so I don't know it that well, but I can say what I heard was pleasing to my ears. And those are available at Billy Jazz Guitars. It's interesting. I said, well, is it really hard to find Millennium Falcons? And he goes, no, they're everywhere. So, and I forgot how mass produced things were even back in the late 70s. I had one, actually. I had one of these exact model Millennium Falcons, and they were a lot of fun to play with. The back came off and you could kind of see inside. You could have Luke playing around with his sword and that little, thing that he was training with. The chessboard table is there. There's space to move around. You can play with the cockpit. It was, it was a pretty cool little thing, and very sizable for a toy box back in the 70s. But it was cool, and I really enjoyed it. I played with that a lot when I was a kid. So kind of neat to see it turned into an instrument. And the bass guitar. I would like to hear that. I should have checked that out maybe next year. But a very cool thing. And I like when people take things that are just kind of sitting around doing nothing and finding some new things to do with them. That's always very cool. Let's see, what else do we have here? See, some of these are just business cards that have names that I'm going to have to look up and see what they were because I don't remember. There is a thing called the Ascender. The Ascender with which is basically a fold-in electric guitar. So imagine taking the neck of a guitar and being able to bend it back behind the guitar to consolidate it for carrying it around, for travel, for storage, that sort of thing. And it's really neat how it works, because on the inside of the back where you bend the neck, I thought, well, aren't your strings going to be constantly going out of tune if you have this mechanism, if you're constantly bending it? But basically what this thing does is it compensates the tuning or the string tension, I should say, for bending the neck. So when you fold the neck back, this other piece slides into place, and it helps keep the strings where they're supposed to be, so that you can just snap the neck back into place and not lose any quality. Of course, I imagine if you do it enough times, you'll have to retune, but you're probably going to retune well before then anyway. So that's kind of neat. I thought it was pretty innovative, something I hadn't seen before, and I really like the science behind it. I think that that's something that's cool. I love that we're taking things that have been around for years or decades or centuries and finding new ways to continue to make them cool. And I see a lot of that in the percussion world too, even if drums have been around forever, but we're still finding new ways to shape the wood, to ease the tension on the lugs, to come up with different sounding heads and different kind of shells and things that make it all interesting. So I really, really love that. I thought it was a great piece of gear. So I'm just going through my cards here and trying to find, I probably should have done this before the show, I suppose, but I didn't. All these right here. And maybe this is kind of a lesson for something like this, that, it would be a good idea to have maybe a picture, a little bit more of a description of what you've got going on. Of course, I've got my cards from Audionamix and all the wonderful people that I can now put a face to, those wonderful names. So great to see, Ellie. It really was. I was a little bit, I have to say, sadly disappointed in the fact that I found I'm going to be moving, and I'm going to be looking probably for an audio desk. And I saw one that I really, really liked. It had 3 posts on it, and 3 for monitors, and 3 equipment bays that are already lined with the racks to put the screws in for rack gear. And I still use some rack gear. And so I was all excited, and I looked at it, and I'm like, something's not quite right. So it's got the 3 stands for monitors. And of course I use much bigger televisions. So I thought, well, I could lean them between the having the edges on them. And I think that would work out well if I don't do some sort of wall mounting, which eventually I probably will. But what I didn't like was the keyboard tray was only big enough for, I think it was a 61 note keyboard, maybe a 76, but I used an 88. And so the whole desk at that point just did not work. And I asked her, well, do you have any other models? And she looked up the catalog, and nothing at all that fit an 88 key keyboard. And I thought, well, the people that buy studio desks are home studio composers. Maybe they have a studio somewhere else in a house or in a facility. And a lot of score composers use an 88 note keyboard so that they don't have to transpose the octave and then have to redo that when they do the sheet music for the players. And so I thought it was kind of a mistake to not have an option available for that. So I kind of explained why I felt so strongly about it. And they said that they would take that information and send it back to their people. And hopefully that'll do some good. So maybe by next year, we'll see that. That would be cool because I really like the desks. I mean, they had a really nice feel to them. They were very sturdy. I liked the angle of the rat gear because it was kind of a 45-degree angle. So instead of it being flat, where you can only see the first ones in front or tall, where the shadows might impair your vision a little bit, you had everything available to you. So that was really nice. And I like that. So hopefully, you never know. We'll see. So what else do we have here? There's so many, like I recognize the card and I've already forgotten what the hell it was that we talked about. But you don't want to be carrying a bunch of pamphlets around either, because, you're going to be there all day and there's just going to, be pressing on your fingers to carry all these cards and things. So, you can get a swag bag, but then it kind of feels weird carrying that around. And I don't know, the whole thing just gets kind of weird. But there was, that's pretty much it for cards. I guess that's a little disappointing, but that's okay. I'll have the links to the ones that I talked about in the show notes. And, But yeah, it was a great show. And I have to say, for me, probably one of the best that I've been to because of the connections that I made. And obviously seeing Glenn and Steve for the first time. So basically in a 2-hour period, I doubled the members of Deep Purple that I've met, which was nice. And who knows what'll happen in the future. I know that Deep Purple's new album is set to come out this spring. I don't have any other details on it. Don't have a date, don't have a title, don't know how many songs. All I know is it's set to come out this spring, and I'm very excited about that because I absolutely love the last album they did, Infinite. I think it's one of the best albums I've ever heard. And, to see guys that have been living their life, writing music, to see them still at the pinnacle and creating some wonderful things is really inspiring. So, great show. Thank you to Cloud Mics for bringing me out. Really enjoyed it. It was great seeing my friend Martina again, who's just one of the most amazing and dynamic people that I've met. She's very, very intelligent, and her husband, who's just a great guy and another very intelligent business person. Really good ideas. Found out that Martina was actually she is now a Guinness Book of Records record holder, and it was for being a part of the world's largest pedal board. Now, I don't know why I'm obsessed with pedal boards. I'm not a guitar player. Effects and toys are always cool, but I'm not a guitar player. But when I go to these shows, I'm like, I got to check out the pedals. I got to see the pedal boards. I just love looking at the way they're arranged. I don't know what it is, but I do enjoy them. And there are bass players that have pedal boards, but like I said, I plug everything in direct. All my effects are in the box. So not anything I really need. I do have one compressor pedal. Because when I first was getting started, I didn't really know how to record direct with the bass. And I was so focused on getting a good recording and getting the notes right that I thought I probably should get a compressor to make sure that I'm not going too heavy in the sound in the recording while I'm trying to concentrate on playing. Because as I am a fairly new player, it takes a lot more concentration for me to do a take than it will as I get better at this. So, so she was part of this thing where they did the world's biggest pedal board. I haven't seen it yet, but she actually has the certificate, which is pretty cool. I don't think I've ever known a world record holder before. So I find that kind of cool. And she's such a great person. That's kind of a neat accolade for her to have. But then went back to the hotel, was just completely exhausted by the last day. So much walking around, and the Anaheim Convention Center is pretty big, and it's all the floors, the entire side that they added last year, I think for the first time, another 2 floors on the other side, very big rooms over on the Hilton side of things, and just a massive, massive walking area. And Saturday, I walked the entire floor, every aisle of everything, because I wanted to make sure I saw it all. I've got tons and tons of pictures on my personal Facebook album. I might throw some of those into the album for the podcast. I'm not sure, but it was great. And then had met my friend Allie Edwards, who's a fantastic singer. She and her husband Casey had a huge hit with Devil Trigger. for the Devil May Cry 5 video game. And it's a great song. They did a great video for it, which is on YouTube. And the song just busted through the charts on iTunes. I was so happy for them. And they've got some more great stuff coming up. And she's just a fantastic singer. He's a great composer. And they make a great team. So I was really grateful to get some time to spend with her. She's a very talented, very sweet girl, and one of my dear friends. So really enjoyed that. And then I headed home through heavy traffic and storms, but made it and finally got some rest and decided then to record the podcast so that you guys can hear it. But that's pretty much it. That's the NAMM wrap up. Great friends, great new gear, great networking. And I hit all three of the major things. Maybe picked up a couple projects, definitely made some more connections, doing walkthrough videos and that. Great to see everybody. And for those of you that I only get to see once a year, see you again next year. Feel free to come visit us in Vegas anytime. We've got plenty of lights and rooms and things to drink, so and shows to entertain you. So come visit. And that's about it. We'll be back next week on the HaskinCast podcast with episode 2 of Chandra Jefferson. That'll be episode 94 with just 6 more episodes to go to the first big milestone, episode 100. So as I sign off, I want to say thank you guys all for taking the time to listen to the show. I know I just babbled on for 45 minutes, but hopefully you found some things that were interesting. The show is just phenomenal. If it's something that if you're able to go and see, it's not a public show, but if you're able to get into the show, if you're authorized, I should say, then it's definitely worth trying to make it to at least once in your life. I think it's a fantastic experience. Just wear some really, really comfortable shoes because you're going to be doing a lot of walking, a lot of standing. Bring some really good earplugs. I refuse to go into the NAMM show without my earplugs from Eargasm. They're the only ones that even in that cacophony, I'm able to actually have a conversation with somebody. And that's very important when you're doing networking and talking about projects and talking about working together or, learning how something works and how maybe you can use it in your setup. So definitely highly recommend Eargasm earplugs. And so thank you guys for listening. Thanks to everyone who shares the podcast, who has reviewed or rated the podcast. If you haven't already, please, for the love of all creatures, great and small, take a moment to do that. It really does make a big difference. And I greatly appreciate that. And we will see you guys next week for another episode of the HaskinCast podcast. Cheers.